Okay, hello and welcome to Bipolarcast. This is a podcast where myself and Matt Buzuki speak to people with bipolar disorder and clinicians and scientists working in this space about metabolic therapies for mental illness. Both Matt and I have bipolar disorder and benefited from using ketogenic metabolic therapy for our illness. Today, we're really excited to have Michael on the show, and Michael is a long-term listener of Bipolarcast, and he approached a psychiatrist about using ketogenic metabolic therapy after watching the podcast, and he's written to us, and we've been in conversation since then. Michael, thank you very much for coming on the show.
No, thank you. And thank you, Matt. And thank you, Ian. I just have you guys you saved my life. I can't, it sounds like an exaggeration, but it doesn't feel like that at all. It really doesn't.
Thank you. I mean,
thank you, man.
Thank you for listening. So you the first time you'd got in touch was on YouTube. You'd left this comment on, it was Christmas Day last year, saying that things were improving for you going into keto. And you'd mentioned that you had a long period of depression leading up to this. How long was the depression leading up to this happening?
It's hard to say, through life, but, the cycle, it happened every 3 years at some point, for years and years. But I would say the really rough spots were about 3 years, where the final half of that 18 months or so was just devastating personally.
How do you mean devastating personally? What kinds of things?
Just everything. Work went down, and family life got more and more stressful because of my illness. Like putting it all on me, really. And I started to self-isolate because I have too much agitation and anxiety. Anxiety is a large component of how the illness comes out in me, and the depression lasts a lot longer, as you guys know. I mean, I have type 2, so I tend to be in the depression phase a lot more than the hypomania. If that makes sense, if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this was quite a long, prolonged depression that you were in leading up to this. And what kind of changes did you have to make into your life to accommodate this long depression? What kind of things changed for you during this depression?
One of I'd feel guilt from lashing out at people for things I was anxious about, and then because you feel the guilt, you figure, well, maybe I'll just back off and not put myself in situations that aggravate me every 5 minutes, and set me off. So I started to self-isolate to the point where I literally moved my sleeping. You justify it saying, oh, downstairs is dark, I'll be in the dark for a while, but really it's just you're moving away from your loved ones. And I slept down there probably 6 months the first time, and probably 8 months the second time I did that.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man.
It's tough.
I can totally relate to the isolation and the prolonged depression. And so when did you start doing, so you'd approached a psychiatrist, which is what we always recommend on this show, to always do this with support from a psychiatrist and a dietitian if you can, and when did you start doing ketogenic diet?
Well, my first hospital visit was in June of 22. And when I got out, I just started devouring, because I was unable to really function for work too much, just not concentrating and thinking about everything else. So I devoured everything I could about bipolar. So the first thing I did was try to understand the illness. And at the same time, you're trying to figure out, what are my feelings, or what is amplified? What's, am I really upset about that? And maybe it's just out of whack. Or is it just anxiety? So I started devouring content like crazy. I'm sure that's how I found you, probably in July, at the end of June. So I the Walsh protocol, if you've ever heard of that, it has to do with methylation and vitamin Bs and things like that. That was the first thing I reached out to a doctor for, and I said, I need the Walsh protocol. I think I'm overly methylated, because you're diagnosing yourself and all that, by watching all the things. And then a couple weeks or a week later, I found you guys. But so the keto wasn't the first thing I reached out to him for. I just knew that the practitioners I had previously were not serving me very well at all, and I needed to change all my doctors. including my PC, and everybody was just not what I needed personally.
I just
What
wanted to
was
highlight.
What
Sorry.
was your doctor's response? I know that a lot of doctors like can be hesitant when you bring up keto for the first time.
Yeah.
What was your doctor's response when you brought it up?
Well, through the same pattern I did for the Walsh protocol, I went online and found out through his website, who was practitioners of the Walsh protocol, and my doctor, Dr. Matthew Bernstein of Ellenhorn, here in Massachusetts. He came up on that list, not for keto, but for the Walsh protocol. So that's how I contacted him, because it's through that channel, because of that channel. But by the time I actually got him to agree to even consider taking me on as a patient, because he said no right away. I'm too busy. I can't. And I begged him all summer, and I said, please, I need somebody to do this. And it was keto by that point. And he said no. And I said, okay, but when can I ask you again? And he answered that question in the positive to like, okay, come back to me in 2 months and ask me again. And I kind of went on the little queue. And then he gave me an appointment for my first appointment for November. And I slid the whole time. Like I was getting worse and worse up until that appointment. Like a week before his appointment, I hadn't even met him yet. My nurse practitioner, who was maintaining my medicines, she was filling out paperwork for disability, like probably permanent, because cognitively I couldn't even carry on a sentence. And this is 22, November. And it was just frightening for me and my family and everything. But the second he took me on, he had me, do the panel of blood tests and things for creatine and a bunch of other things, and vitamin deficiencies, hormone deficiencies, a whole bunch of things, just to make sure there's nothing else going on medical that can contribute that might get in the way of the treatment. And I do have a vitamin D deficiency, a really severe one. But having been in the dark for 18 months, that makes a lot of sense. And vitamin B's as well, I think, are a problem for me. So the methylated B9 and 12 help me too. I'm not sure if I'm filling in the dots here. Or...
So you went on a medically supervised ketogenic diet with Dr. Bernstein.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it was on Christmas Day. I was really happy to read this. It made my Christmas break, actually. You're saying I'm 2 weeks into keto and already dramatically improving. It's the first time I feel hopeful for myself and others in a very long struggle that nearly disabled me this year.
Yeah.
And when did you notice that something was changing based in contrast to this 18 months of depression leading up to trying keto? When did you notice that something was different?
Was kind of the breakthrough? Like I started to feel good. Really quickly. I had done keto before, through the Bulletproof people.
Yep.
Probably around 2007 or 10 or something like that. And I didn't know it at the time, but I lost weight immediately. Like, within days, I was in ketosis even at that time. So for whatever, if it's a mental thing where I make a decision and I switch and I can just choose my food overnight, and I think a lot of people struggle with that kind of thing, I just did it. Even then I did it. And what I now know is hypomania. I felt amazing for like the best I had felt in my life, and I knew I had lost weight. So I was already open to that as a thing. And I knew now, understanding bipolar through all the video watching I did all summer, that was hypomania. I kind of figured that out, because you kind of look back at your life over the decades and you go, oh, that time I did this project and that project, and switch, the things I'm into like a million times. That's hypomania. But so I got into it probably within 3 days, and I would say within a week I was already feeling better. So whether it was inflammation or whatever the mechanism is, that I felt it almost right away. So
and when you
Christmas,
say feeling better, what did that look like for you?
I guess inflamed is the right word, probably, because I was always bloated in some way, at a low grade, like my ring, I can, pull it off now, if or I couldn't before that, things like that. And the brain fog, though, was the absolute best symptom to get rid of. And I still struggle, but I wasn't losing words like within weeks. And the direct comparison, it's interesting that you bring up the Christmas thing, because the previous Christmas, I always loved Christmas. Like, it's a big deal for my family and everybody. It was awful. The one before, it was just devastating. It was like, a 15-minute open presents, and then I went back and isolated the rest of the day, and nobody even noticed. My wife did, but nobody, the kids didn't. But it was different. And this year, I enjoyed it. At least I sat with the family on Christmas, and we opened presents and enjoyed the day. And it was just, it can make me cry just thinking about it. But that was immediate. And that was the 17th is when I officially started, and by the 25th, I was good.
That's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
And were you losing weight during this period as well? Did you have you lost weight since you've been on ketogenic diet?
Yeah. I looked at the thing today. My highest was 197. And I'm pretty sure by July, June, July last year, I was getting back up there, and I had the same, I looked the same. I wasn't checking it, but I'm down to 150 now.
Wow.
And that was true probably by February. So 2 months.
Wow.
So you've lost over 40 pounds doing keto. Wow. Did you, sorry, you said 197 down to 150?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I checked it today. I'm 150. Yeah, today.
Wow, okay. That's incredible. And so you started ketosis, and there was this long period of depression you had. This was my experience also. I was going through a prolonged depression, and I was also looking at vitamin protocols, so many vitamin, because you just run out of options and you start going to all these things because you don't know where else to turn. And so many books on vitamins, unbelievable. I used to go around the vitamin store and just cause trouble by going in every week asking for.
Yeah.
But you just run out of options with bipolar when you're in this like depression that's prolonged, and you don't know where else to turn. So you start looking to every little thing that could possibly help. So I completely relate to this. And so in terms of, like, you were saying you were isolating and had to sleep downstairs and didn't have energy. How did your energy change going from this depression period to going into ketosis throughout Christmas and the New Year?
Yeah, that's a big topic. I wouldn't. I have ADHD symptoms like forever, so like I might forget during a whole day to eat anyway. But during the depression, I wouldn't even ever eat unless somebody made me. Or if I did eat, I would eat all the wrong things and eat like 2 boxes of cookies, like literally in a sitting and things like that. It's just, so you're either eating all the wrong things, too many, or not eating at all. And I'd say, but sleep is probably the biggest deal, because as people, I hope people fully know that have bipolar, you have to control your sleep, because when you don't get sleep, everything goes off the rails. Like that's the first acute thing you always. So I actively worked on that along with the keto diet. And then the third leg would be stress reduction, to try to do that as well. So I'd say those, to answer your question, sleep improve, like I actively improved sleep, and the diet, and then those kind of worked hand in hand. So those are probably the biggest changes. Like, oh wow, I eat now regularly, or but work was still really, really difficult at that time. That didn't improve for a while.
So yeah, and for people watching, this is my experience as well, as handling the diet, doing keto or whatever, or low carb, or whatever diet's going to work best for you, but then handling the sleep. So for me, it was doing keto and handling the sleep.
Right.
It means getting to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time and getting sunlight.
Yep.
It's so,
I never appreciated it.
Right. It just did so much for me. I mean, those two things did more for me than virtually any medication I can think of that I tried. And I've tried dozens of them, aside from maybe like, the ones I took in acute manic state, like Zyprexa and things like that. Right. But yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, how did you get the idea to manage your sleep as well as the diet when you started doing it? How did you realize that was important?
I think I knew that just by all the video watching, and because I couldn't read anymore, but I was a big reader. So you watch, what do? You do audiobooks, which I would just go in one ear out the other. But the videos, for whatever reason, I could focus. for like a long lecture. So I'm pretty sure that's how I learned about it. Because even in the inpatient, they didn't really push your sleep. They would just say, "Oh, if you're still awake at 3, you can take a sleeping pill, but if not, you're on your own for the night." That's like that wasn't really that much guidance. So I'm pretty sure I got it on my own. And then Dr. Bernstein, of course, was very adamant that sleep was the first thing I was going to fix. Absolutely 100%. It was no two ways about it. He wasn't having that. Like, sleep had to get fixed first.
Dr. Bernstein sounds like a legend. Recommending diet and sleep interventions is so we'll have to reach out to him to come on the show. And maybe you can introduce us, that'd be fantastic. So that's so what's really remarkable about this is because the bipolar depression is especially hard to treat. Like with mania, there can be things that can help, like if someone's in hospital, to kind of help bring them down to some degree. But with depression, there's really almost nothing that seems to kind of consistently work in the long term. There's some people respond to like Lamictal, like lamotrigine, kind of things like this, but to have a turnaround from 18 months, like severe and almost catatonic depression at times, to feeling well and able to function and re-engaging with family, and it's really something that's kind of unprecedented in bipolar. And I certainly experienced that shift as well, coming out of that really severe depression into having like normal levels of energy. How has it changed life for you and your family? You mentioned having to sleep downstairs. And
right before Christmas, I moved the room back upstairs, and that was really good, to be able to do that. It felt like a symbol. I apologize to anybody that knows me and watching this, and this is traumatizing for them to hear details, but it's not for you. It's for other people that need to hear these things. One of the trips to the hospital, I got so frustrated that I couldn't get my doctor. He was on vacation. The other one wouldn't help me. I wanted a medicine to help me sleep, and I knew I had to go to the hospital, and I didn't want to go into the emergency room without someone calling ahead. Otherwise, you're going to wait 8 hours here in the U.S. That's it's a Friday night. So I wanted them to I got so mad, I punched a hole in the wall. So one of the things we did before Christmas when I moved back up was we fixed the wall, and it just was all symbolic, and it all kind of came, together. So like every positive step you're doing to kind of fix, it really did help everybody.
Just seeing you now, like, I don't know how people totally realize like these kinds of recoveries in bipolar disorder are unprecedented.
Right. Miracle.
Like this does not happen. So when I had all my episodes and I was declared treatment resistant, and it was like, you're just going to be on meds, your life is going to be suboptimal, you're going to have brain fog, you're going to have to battle this. Right. Like the recoveries that we can make, like, and seeing you now just hear eloquent Michael speaking well, putting together ideas, and knowing that how impossible it could be to do something like this that it would have been for me to do something like that when I was in the grips of the illness. I mean, it's just remarkable, man. It's crazy.
Thank you. People need to hear it. I meet a lot of people in different support groups and things, and that I've known people with bipolar when I was younger. As I was familiar, I have family too. I was familiar with the illness. So the whole 2007 was the first time I went into a psychiatrist's office, and I apologize for using the old phrase, but I said, I have manic depression. And they're like, no, you don't, you have depression. So I have a history of the wrong medicines, and the medicines always made me sicker. And treatment resistant could describe me 100%. Like, I have a box of 18 pills that I took within 18 months. And they all made me sick. And I'm pretty sure, I can't say for sure, but I don't think anything in my life was that bad, or my bipolar symptoms were that bad alone, until I took the wrong types of classes of medicine that help plenty of people, but not good for me. And I'm pretty sure that that's what landed me in the hospital, because I've battled with the depression my whole life, the SIs and STs, just to use the code for that, so not trigger anybody. But, I had this since I was really, really young, and I dealt with them then. So I was always able to keep going. I always knew I'd get through it. I knew it was, something, even when it got really bad. But the medicines put me to the point where I was in that agitated state as well. So you get, They get angry and reactive to everything emotionally, and you got energy behind it as well. So it's like being depressed and manic at the same time. That's just it's hurtful to people.
And the wrong medicine, the wrong medications can be really bad. For me, the right medications at the right time absolutely saved my life. Like, I really don't think I would be here without them. I would be locked up like back in the day before they had these.
Yeah.
But the wrong ones for the wrong people can be not good. So and for me, it's been a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the answer.
Right. And some of them are that, like, the ones that they gave me in the hospital, like, I would only take them for a few days and scared about them. And Dr. Bernstein's like, well, if you're not sleeping, you got to take those. And like, I'm like, okay, but I won't do it more than a week. That was the deal we made, and it worked. And that's how the medicines were designed even in the studies that made them approved, they're for short term, and that's how we used them, and they saved my life as well. So I'm not against them. It's just that, like lithium, for instance, that's a common one everybody knows. That helped me, but before I even got out of the hospital, my kidney and thyroid levels have gone way, way up. And they would give me the speech that, we'll check it in a year and it'll gradually change, and then we'll treat that when that happens. And then they had to tell me, oh, well, this isn't a question. Sometimes it happens. And I'm like, that's it. And I don't know if it was the stress of that happening to me that I just didn't tolerate the medicines. And I kind of blamed all summer the medicines on every time I would switch. Like, you gave me a medicine and made me switch, like Lamictal. I don't know that it's the Lamictal that did it, but I do know it didn't help, and the cycles were pushing through. And I cycle in a rapid sense, which is tough.
So this was really interesting to me. You'd mentioned that you have this kind of like rapid cycling of bipolar, where your mood can shift like very much in a day, from depressed to manic to anywhere in between, and then it shifts over weeks and sort of like longer periods as well. And I wonder if this is like a sort of this is very familiar to me. Like, this was the type of bipolar I suffered from, was this like ability to wake up feeling like, almost suicidally depressed, and then feeling fine by the afternoon and hypomanic. It was very responsive to something, and the only thing I've found that explains that is I tracked my glucose and ketone levels and metabolic function over a year, and I found those correlations between that shifting in my symptoms. And so this kind of like this rapid cycling of bipolar seems to be a specific kind of type of bipolar disorder, and I wonder whether there are certain types of bipolar disorder that respond well to ketogenic therapy. It's really interesting. Did you say it was 18 different medications that you tried before going on keto?
Yeah, 18. I kept them all because I know my memory had been sliding. You just know. So I decided to keep them in case anybody asked me someday. I'd put them all in the box, and they're all still locked in the box. And interesting thing about that box is, I'd have my wife, hide the key, just for safety, but when a new one would come and fail, I'd go like, okay, put it in the box, so they're still here. I still have them all. 18 SNRIs, SSRIs, everything you can think of.
Did any of these help you in a way that like ketos helped you with the depression side of bipolar?
Not even close. No.
Wow.
Nothing. Lithium helped a little bit. And I'd say that the benzos got me when I was hot. It would make me sleep that night. And then if I did that a couple of days, that would have an effect. And the one doctor explained to me that the benzos have two benefits for bipolar people. They can actually like cut the mania down as well as help you sleep. Like there's two effects. So that was probably the most immediate effect I had from medicine were those two, lithium and benzos.
Wow.
So Michael, you start keto last year, right? Last year, late in the year. So take us through the first few weeks and the first few months. What changed, what you noticed, and what got better?
Sure.
Can I ask a follow-up question as well?
Sure.
Is one thing we often note is with doing keto, some people experience like periods of hypomania initially, transitioning into the diet, and then it stabilizes. Is this something that you also? To me, it's a sign that this is doing something really profound in the brain. But we're trying to understand this as well. Did you? If you could take us through the whole experience, that'd be wonderful.
I would say, so December 17th, I started. By Christmas, I already was feeling good. So I'd say hypomania is probably accurate. And that my sleep started to slip. And I don't I don't sense the change into a state. I notice it after the fact, like with sleep and things like that. So I know if my sleep slips or if I'm more emotionally sensitive than perhaps I should be. I notice after the fact. But the one thing I do notice is when I get out of a state, if that makes sense. So I got hypomanic, sleep started to slip, and I also started to do some of the fun things and creative things that I do, where I start a project, and because I'm like starting to feel good. So I did that in December for sure. And I've probably switched it 3 times since. Because I've done some app development, game development, and music is a big thing for me. And I probably obsess over playing music a little bit more than, as a responsible adult probably should, as far as hours of the day. So I found myself doing that and posting more videos online. And the interesting thing about that is that I was also watching them back to try to gauge my state. So I could look like, am I using grandiosity here? Am I a little bit delusional about, like what the music is for? And it's really about fun usually. But when I get delusional, I start to have grandeur and think, oh yeah, this is going to be great. I'm going to, write a great song and, things are going to blow up. But I know that's just the hypomania. And I did that in January for sure. So it was music in January, game stuff in February. And as I start to feel better, that stuff starts to taper off and I start to see it for the fun that it really is, instead of, some kind of for something else, you know what I mean? And as a stress relief and a fun thing to do. I'd say that's the biggest thing. And then watching the videos, I would say, oh, okay, good. I can hear with my speech. I can hear with my jaw. My jaw was so clenched from anxiety that it hurt. Just as a side offshoot, I have false teeth, and so I don't wear them at night. But my doctor, when I told him I was clenching my jaw from anxiety, he doesn't see it because I'm talking to him kind of like I am to you, but I'm masking, even though I don't want to. I want him to know that I chatter my teeth all day and I can't stop. And I can't, it hurts my sleep and all that. And my jaw is hurting. He goes, well, you should go to a dentist. Like, I don't have any teeth at night, dude. Or 6 months before, you need to go to, we'll send you to a sleep study just in case. Like, dude, I'm not sleeping because I don't feel good. There's something wrong. And you guys aren't giving me the right diagnosis, because I knew what the diagnosis was and they refused to give it to me.
So there's so many things that come with people would be surprised at like how many people with bipolar like have tooth decay. It's like some people don't have the energy to even do basic things like clean your teeth. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah.
I've experienced that when I was very unwell in the past. It's
Guilty.
Yeah. And so the so many people experience the kind of initial, when your brain is turning back on for perhaps the first time in decades, you have this increase in energy. And yeah. I experienced this as well, transitioning into keto for the first time, this like hypomania. And Chris Palmer has noted it, and several other metabolic psychiatrists have talked about this in their patients. And it's a sign that something profound is shifting in the brain, and we're learning ways to manage this. And it's never been something that's been dangerous in any cases that we've heard from people, but it has, and it seems to be well managed by dietitians who are experienced in this with using epilepsy approaches, and you can, they have strategies to manage this. So how long did it take for the hypomania to turn into normal mood for you?
Probably a month or 2 at most. I can't remember the exact date, but I feel, that's where I say I feel this when I come out of hypomania. I actually literally within the minute feel it. And that sounds strange, but I'll be, like with my friends playing guitar, and we're like making a bunch of noise, and then like all of a sudden I'll go, oh, wait, I'm tired. What happened? And I hadn't felt tired in weeks, if more months even, so it was probably in February, I would think, like that click happened. And I was like, and then that night I slept. And the next night after that I slept. So I knew that's confirmation that it changed, but I always feel it.
Yep.
And at the end of March, I felt another click that I had never felt before, which was my energy changed. And then I felt, well, I guess euthymic is the right word. Like I felt normal. and I was less emotionally sensitive for the next, weeks. It's weird to say, but I really feel like I can tell when the hypomania stops. Like I feel it.
And
What was your reaction when you started to feel, you said euthymic, or wait, when the hypomania abated and you felt normal? Did you have some profound moment where you realized, oh my God, I'm feeling better?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was at the end of March that another click. Like, there was this one in February probably, and then one in March, and that one lasted until I screwed up recently. But I think my first thought was, oh, this is great. But then my second one was, I've had this so many times where I had hope that I was around a corner, and then a couple weeks later, it would go back, and I would get upset all over again. Like, oh my gosh, I thought I was okay, with whatever medicine, that we had tried, or whatever the different treatments. And it is very disheartening. So this time, I'd say I was a little bit less skeptical in March than maybe the past times, and a little bit hopeful, but still a little bit fearful, that this wasn't permanent,
So if there's any encouragement, there are people that have done this for very long periods of time. They're documented in this questionnaire study we're doing, and there's people up to 7 years that I've heard from, 5 years, 7 years. I've been doing it myself for 7 years, where you can have extended mood stabilization doing this. And that's not to say people don't slip up on the diet, or of course they do from time to time, but the people have been doing this for epilepsy and for bipolar disorder. So you'd mentioned like having a slip up on the diet, and that happens to people. And I'm interested actually to know what the contrast was like from feeling euthymic and feeling like your mood has improved to what happens if you do go off the diet, because this would indicate that there's something about what you've done that is working. And
yeah. So part of life now is fixing things, anything I can. So whether it's try to be more productive at work, like more hours of the week, or quicker response to fix things that could come up, like things like that. There's life stuff too, like the financial things that you slip up on having the illness and ADHD for decades. And, so I'm trying to like not put too much pressure on myself to fix things, but we're fixing the house. Like, I have a hard time with time still. I'm still not judging days and weeks and as well as memory things. But I was working outside, and it was 80 degrees here, Fahrenheit. And I drink Gatorades to rehydrate, because it's also got some electrolytes. There's better ones, but they're quick to grab. And I didn't read the bottle, and we had grabbed the wrong one. So I didn't cheat, but I drank 5 bottles over the 2 days, which I'm guessing is a couple 100 grams of carbs. I kind of look back at it. And when I realized it, I was holding the bottle and I said, this tastes really, really good. Like there's something wrong. So I looked at the bottle and went, oh, and and I could tell within a day, my mood just tanked. It went down, not up, it went down.
Wow.
And I started yelling at my wife about different things, about like, we need to fix this and fix that, or this deadline. And because it got tricky and we had to do some more things. And anyway, so I was not good about it. I was back to that yelly state, and I would immediate agitation.
So I wanted to point out that this is something that people with epilepsy experience as well. Is if they go off the diet, it's usually within 1 or 2 days their seizure. They usually have a period where the ketones, I guess, are still in the bloodstream, and the seizure stability lasts. But then it comes off, and they can have seizures again after that. And I experienced the same thing. If you come off the diet, then it's 1 or 2 days you have, usually like a day, and then the mood symptoms will return, and then they stabilize again when you go back on it over the periods of 1 or 2 days as your ketone levels come up. How long did it take you to restabilize coming back onto the diet? Did you notice
that happened on a Wednesday and a Thursday, and I'd say by the next Wednesday, I was feeling a lot better, to the point where I could hold in my objections to whatever it was that was upsetting me, and sleep was good, and I wasn't sitting in bed. I could handle things. So about a week, I'd say, to be 80%, 90% recovered.
Oh, that's so scary. I actually stopped ordering diet soda from restaurants. Like I will literally only have a diet soda now if I see it poured in the damn like Coke Zero or wherever it is. Like I just can't. It just scares me too much to think about like. And I'm the same way, double checking all my food, even like grab a Gatorade Zero or something from 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Double check me, man. And the fact that this can avoidable, but it's good to hear that it sounds like it was only a few days when it really messed you up.
There were 3 or 4 days where I was like, and the first day it hit me, I was emotionally, I just blah, blah, blah. But the second day we'd both be looking at each other, my wife and I, like, it's the illness, it's the screw up, we're getting better. And I measure too. So I knew I was bringing that glucose number down. So I went from what I usually get a 77. I ended up at like 125 the day after I had the Gatorade screw ups. And then slowly it came back down. And just 2 days ago, it was just probably a week and a half later or whatever it was, I'm back down to 77.
So I think this is really remarkable because you're describing things that have been described in epilepsy for 100 years of clinical observation of patients, but you're describing it in a condition where a ketogenic diet is not used for treatment. And so I find it really interesting. And many times in this questionnaire study, I've noticed these kinds of dynamics with people describe, in fact, almost every participant in this questionnaire study describes their experience of what it's like to come off the diet. And they describe exactly what you're describing is this like kind of day or so, and then a day reestablishing or a day or two reestablishing the diet. I wanted to ask, it's just really interesting to me, that dynamic. I wanted to ask, what has it meant for being a father to you? Because I know that one of the really heartbreaking things about bipolar, and we spoke to Robin last week, who was describing having kids, and she was so unwell, she couldn't engage with them, like she couldn't, and we've heard that from Mia, who was on previously, that she has, and one of the strongest motivations in the world you can ever have is to look after your children. And even that with bipolar can be taken from someone to a degree, because it's like, so the depression is so draining of energy that you just physically don't have the capacity to do things. What has it meant to you as a father to have to be in ketosis and the effects it's brought to your life?
It's, without talking about them directly, definitely the relationships have improved to the point where it feels hopeful again, where when I come in the room, I don't frighten someone because that's how bad it had gotten. And I heard their stories too, and they make me cry, because I can relate so well to that. My kids are teenagers. So they've known sick dads since they were little, their whole lives. And I didn't, we didn't know that's what the illness was. It was just crazy dad that stressed them out. Like they'd be running around in a circle, and at some point I'd be like, you got to stop it, because it's just, it's agitating me. And I didn't recognize my own anxiety at the time. It's just like, oh, they're kids, but I really did throw the anxiety at them like pretty much their whole lives to this point. And that's the hardest, that, and to my wife too, that has to, manage and actually raise them, because I was sick. And just anything like that you can think of, without getting specific to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And has having energy through the diet made it easier to engage? I know that I felt like with family with family engagements at Christmas, you're mentioning Christmas is always the hardest one, because there's tons of like sugar around from the first place. When I was a kid, like going to those things, I would spend just like you say, the whole day isolating. I would like get through as much of the day as possible, like 11 o'clock, do the meal or whatever, and then just like disappear off into my room for like hours lying on I remember it like so many Christmases, just like lying on the floor and in family engagements in general. Having
it's
energy.
True with extended visits too. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Ian.
No, please. No, please.
I say like even extended visits to other family too, like you'd go to my parents' house and my wife's parents' house and things like that. Even those things like became a lot harder. And, it's having an effect on everybody in the family, not just me, my parents and my kids and my wife. So it really did. it really did put a damper, and this Christmas was better, much better. I think I had a point, and I can't, sorry. I hold one good thought at a time now, and the second thought always pushes out the first thought. It's awful. It's a thing I'm still working on.
it's I know, yeah, I know what you mean. It's like it's very tricky with family, especially because like you're seeing them on such a regular basis, and when you don't have energy to engage, you just can't do anything but isolate, and it's impossible not to sometimes like accidentally offend people because of that. And it's really difficult. There's no easy way around that with bipolar disorder. So
and they see you suffering.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of they want to help, but like, what do you do? You know?
Yeah.
No, you don't know how to help. I think it was the case with my parents too, especially my mom. Like, she wanted desperately to help me, and we tried a lot of stuff, but like at the end of the day, there's no solution there in the moment.
Yeah. Well, thank her too, because it's her indirectly helping you that helped
It's
others.
it's all her. It's all her. Yeah, I will thank her.
It's kind of amazing like how many like reforms and like treatment for something came through families, because it's just like they're the only people that care enough sometimes to really do stuff. Like the whole establishment won't care enough as much as like one mother or one son or one, who's got see someone in their family suffering. It's really like a powerful motivator of change in so many movements, throughout medical history. Is quite remarkable. And so we're just, I just feel fortunate to hear from you, and I appreciate what you're sharing, because it makes it all worth it for us, like hearing from someone that's had this improvement and benefit to the family because of this, because it's as you know, it's not always easy like being public about these things and talking about them, but I feel it's so worth it when someone like yourself finds that thing that we found that really helped them and really helped their family, and that completely makes it all worth it for me. So thank you for sharing about it.
Man,
happy to.
It reminds me, I mean, it's crazy to me to think about, and it's humbling to know that if I hadn't been fortunate, if my mom hadn't stumbled across this, got in contact with Dr. Palmer, I would probably still be sick. I mean, I might be able to live a little bit, but and make do, but I would be sick. So it's humbling to know that this is not, I feel like I just got lucky. I'm lucky I found this diet. So many people don't, who potentially be getting well. And I guess one thing I will ask about is, I felt a lot of resentment when I started this because I had been prescribed the wrong things. No one had told me about this. I felt like I'd been mistreated by the system, by healthcare professionals, even though I do believe they had good intentions on the whole. Did you feel any of that?
To the point where I played it out in psychosis might not be the right word for hypomania, but in the hospital. I laugh about it now, but I was too mad at the staff. I curse a lot in general in life anyway. It's just a social thing that everybody I know does. And they're not used to that, for one thing. But the other thing is, I was also hot. That's why I call it when excuse me. When I get the agitation state, the mixed mode or whatever they call it. And I wrote up everything my doctors did so that I wouldn't forget, because I knew I was cognitively not remembering things. So I spent one night at 3:00 in the morning in the hospital, and I found every piece of paper I could, every scrap, and I wrote in every corner. And then when I thought of a new thing, I'd turn it to fill in that space, and I numbered them so I'd be able to kind of track back like the order of everything that I wrote in. And when I was going to go home, unfortunately, another patient passed away in the hospital while we were there. And I think they kind of pushed us out a little bit just in case it was traumatic for us. And I got paranoid they were going to look through my stuff before I got sent home, because I was still sick, but the doctor's like, "You're the healthiest person here." And I'm like, okay, whatever. But I took those pieces of paper and I ripped them all up into tiny pieces and thought, oh, they're going to find them and put them back together. So I went through the whole facility and put some in one barrel and some in a different barrel. I even put water on it to try to destroy them so that you couldn't recreate the thing. And then I had a moment of sanity for a second, and I asked one of the staff if they were going to look through my stuff. She goes, "Why?" And I'm like, "I don't know, to make sure I'm healthy enough to go home." And she's like, "No, we don't do that." And I had just spent the whole time like ripping up like it was evidence of some big scandal, because every word of that was something a doctor had said to me or had prescribed me wrong. And I say I'd spent until November really, really angry about the healthcare that I had had to that point. And I'm still changing doctors at this point because because of some of the things they had said to me, like, "You haven't crashed your life. You can't have bipolar. You're still employed and you still are married. There's no way. You have depression and you have ADHD." And it's like, yeah, those are true, but I also have bipolar, but you don't meet the criteria. It's like, oh, that says So anger was a very, very large component until December. That was probably my biggest gift on Christmas.
I think, I mean, it's really frustrating when you have this, especially when you're young and you don't know what's happening. And it's also really hard to tell if you're just like, you just assume that you're just really bad at life because it's like you're getting all this negative feedback, but you can't identify that this is a biological problem with your brain. It's just like you just assume you're kind of crap because there's no other way to interpret it, and that's really hard for young people especially. And so often people don't get diagnosed because they just assume it's just something wrong with me, but they don't think of it as a disorder. So it's like usually there's a 10-year lag from having episodes to getting diagnosed with bipolar. So I totally relate to the frustration with how this is dealt with, and I think that it will change over time, but it's something that's going to take a lot of work, and I'm really excited to embark on that over the next 10 and 20 years of trying to see that change. Have you decided, because of your experience with keto, to do this long term now? Is this something you're going to continue long into the future? Because of experience?
100%. I especially with that accidental experiment, last week, I don't know how long it's going to be before I could tolerate more of the way I see it, the food that was toxic to me. It might not be toxic to everybody, or maybe it will be eventually, decades later, but people can tolerate food that I can. That's okay. I'm all right with that. The emotional part of eating foods I love I'll have to deal with that. But this is permanent, for sure. There's no way. But I have tested a little bit. So instead of going from 20 grams of carbs, I'll only do it once every like 2 or 3 weeks, but I'll eat like a slice of pizza and eat it regular. But I won't eat the big part of the crust, just knowing that I'm getting maybe 50 grams of carbs instead of 20. And I do notice in the meter readings, but it doesn't make me sick. The symptoms don't. I've done it twice, and so I imagine I'm gonna maybe relax the carb number at some point, but I can't do it now because it took me 3 days to get that 2 days. That was Saturday. So it took me 2 days to get the number back down to 77. So as long as I keep measuring, I might occasionally, have a slice of pizza,
And it shows that it's so interesting because we're in the infancy of this treatment. Like no one knows anything. So and my experience too has been, it's taken trial and error for me to realize what I can withstand. I find that even though sometimes I can let my carbs creep up and I don't experience, manic episodes per se, it impacts me. So I function better when they're lower. But Michael, your experience of having all of those carbs in whatever that was, the Gatorade drink, and then having your mood tank, to me, it demonstrates how powerful this intervention is. If you can have one relapse like that, obviously an accidental, and then it happens, it affects your mood so profoundly. And it makes me feel like we're all living in the Matrix. Like, what are we doing here? Like, here in the United States, I go to 7-Eleven and there's literally nothing. I mean, I can have maybe a diet soda or almonds, a few almonds. There's nothing
maybe
I
a
can
Slim
eat.
Jim.
Right? It blows my mind that we're so regressive in the way we approach food here in the United States, where I live in California.
Yeah.
And it just makes me angry more than anything these days.
It's true. When I come out to the States, everything is it's like you're dodging sugar left, right, and center. It's like people throwing it at you. It's like hard to get anything that doesn't have. It's like, but it does make me angry as well, because this is like what we're feeding children in schools. You know, we're like feeding them these like high carb, sugary meals with sugary drinks and vending machines full of chocolate, and I'm like, I don't want my children exposed to that. You know, like I want them to like I absolutely don't want them exposed to that, especially if they're in any way vulnerable to what I've been. Like, and it's infuriating because a lot of that is driven by profit. Like you can sell wheat with sugar and vegetable oil. There's some of the cheapest commodities available to a food system. So it's like, let's pack it into everything possible. Anyway, I digress, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
So Michael, I want to be respectful of your time because we're coming up an hour.
Sure.
And I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing with us about this, because like I say, it totally makes it worth it when I know there's someone else who's struggling with the same things is benefiting in this way and finding this benefit. What advice would you give to people that are really struggling, and like you were for the 18 months that you were going through this?
Can I give a message to clinicians?
Absolutely.
And kind of get the diet and the anger and the last the year and how things changed. The medicines got so bad that I have limited vision, and the lithium that I was taking actually clogged up my eye is the theory. And I lost vision to the point where I couldn't drive anymore. And that was culminating up into November and leading to my stress that then actually aggravates the illness symptoms, right? And every single doctor would not talk to the other doctors. My GP, my eye doctors, and my psychiatrist would not work together to say you can or you cannot take that medicine, because everyone doesn't want to meddle with the other one's medicines, especially psychiatric. But when it comes to vision, it's the same thing. And the GP is just like putting his hands up. I would say you got to stop doing that, because I'm tired of hearing you're a special case. You don't understand. It's like, I know when I came in, I told you I was sensitive to stuff, and I told you my history and all the trouble I've had. So please listen to your patients individually. We're all different. That's my message. The most important thing I could say to anybody.
Thank you. And we must get Dr. Bernstein to come on and chat to him. And is he using this with other patients now that
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, sure. That will be really interesting. Are there any final closing thoughts you'd like to share with the Bipolarcast audience?
No, keep this in mind as a possibility. And you don't have to say, I'm never going to eat pizza again, or I'm never going to have pasta again. You can say, let's try it for 3 months. Who wouldn't want to try something for 3 months and then evaluate? When your sweet tooth is gone, you're going to feel different. You don't think so right now. You might have the emotional, thing with the holidays and eating and all that, but the physical cravings and all that stuff goes away. So like instantly, like within 2 weeks, so give it a try for 3 months. What do you get to lose,
Right.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Do you have any final thoughts, Matt?
No, it's just every time we talk to someone who's, it makes my day. It makes me realize how the solution can be more simple than, and not a personality problem,
Yeah,
absolutely.
So thanks again, guys, for introducing everybody and me to that. It's amazing.
Thank you very much.
Is so important.
Thank you, and please keep in touch, and let's chat again soon. It was great to speak to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye-bye.